Have you ever given your heart to someone and wondered when love became so heavy? You try harder, you compromise more, you tell yourself that sacrifice is part of love, yet peace keeps slipping further away. We live in a time where love is talked about constantly, but understanding it feels harder than ever. Promises are made quickly, boundaries are crossed quietly, and desire often speaks louder than wisdom. Now, you might think this is a modern problem, a result of busy lives and changing times. But this struggle is far older than we imagine. Long before cities and technology, African folklore warned that love is not just a feeling, it is a force powerful enough to open doors between worlds, and dangerous enough to blur the line between blessing and loss. In these stories, love sometimes attracted spirits, not always with evil intentions, but always with rules. And when those rules were ignored, love demanded something in return. A meeting that felt like destiny, a promise that felt worth any sacrifice, and consequences no one ever expects at the beginning. This story is about love, spirits, and the moment desire becomes a choice that cannot be taken back. Long ago, in a time remembered only through songs and moonlit stories, there stood a village at the edge of the forest and the river. The people believed the land was alive. Every tree had a memory. Every stream carried a spirit, and every important choice was made with the ancestors in mind. The villagers were not afraid of the spirit world. They honored it. They poured libations at dawn, spoke prayers at dusk, and taught their children that love, like fire, must be handled with care. Among them lived a young woman known for her quiet strength and patience, and a young man whose heart longed deeply for connection and devotion. In this village, love was not taken lightly. It was seen as a bond that tied families and stores and the unborn together. But there was an old understanding passed down through generations. Some forms of love did not belong entirely to the human world. The elders spoke of spirits who walked near the river at night, appearing in beauty and kindness, drawn to human affection and longing. They warned that while such encounters could bring favor and protection, they always came with conditions. One rule was spoken softly, almost like a secret: no human heart should bind itself fully to what does not share the same world. Those who forgot this were not cursed immediately. They were tested, and the village believed that when the boundary between worlds is crossed for love, the cost is never revealed at the beginning. That belief, quiet, ancient, and rarely questioned, stood at the center of this story. Now you might be thinking, this is just another old story. What can it possibly teach me today? After all, the world we live in feels very different. We talk about emotions openly now. We analyze relationships. We name behaviors, patterns, and intentions. It can seem easy to dismiss ancient folk tales as superstition, beautiful, perhaps, but distant from real life. And that doubt is completely understandable. But African folk tales were never meant to compete with history books or science. They were designed to carry truth in a form the human mind remembers best: story. Long before psychology had a name, these stories explored desire, attachment, fear, and devotion with remarkable precision. When elders spoke of spirits, they were not only describing beings beyond the physical world, they were also giving language to forces that live inside every human heart: longing that pulls us forward, fear that warns us too late, attachment that feels comforting at first and demanding over time. Think of this story not as fantasy, but as a mirror. You don't argue with a mirror. You don't ask it to change what it shows. You look into it to understand yourself more clearly. In many African traditions, spirits appear where emotions are strongest, near rivers, forests, crossroads, and dreams. These places symbolized moments of transition, uncertainty, and choice. Love, especially deep love, was believed to open such crossroads in the human life. So when a folk tale speaks of a spirit drawn to affection, it is also speaking about desire that grows beyond intention. When it warns of rules being broken, it reflects boundaries ignored in moments of emotional intensity. And when consequences follow, they do not arrive as punishment, but as balance. This is why these stories endured, not because people believed blindly, but because they recognized themselves within them. What you are about to hear is not a lesson about the past. It is an exploration of emotional truths that have remained unchanged. How love can guide, how it can test, and how it can quietly demand more than we expect when wisdom is set aside. And that is why this story still matters today. It began quietly, as most turning points do. On an evening when the sky softened into deep blue and the village settled into rest, the young man walked alone toward the river. In many African traditions, rivers were believed to be places where worlds touch, where human thoughts travel easily, and where spirits listen. He did not go there seeking magic. He went carrying longing. The water was calm, reflecting the moon like polished metal, and that was when he noticed her. She stood at the edge of the river, graceful and still, as if she had always been part of the night. Her beauty was not loud or overwhelming. It was familiar, almost comforting. They spoke. Her voice carried warmth and understanding, and she listened in a way that made his words feel lighter. She spoke of companionship without struggle, of affection without conflict, of a love that did not fade with time. In many folk tales, such spirits are not cruel deceivers. They offer what the human heart already desires most. When he asked where she came from, she smiled and gave no clear answer, only that she belonged to the river, and the river remembered everything. In the days that followed, the young man returned. Sometimes he met her by the water, other times in dreams that felt more real than waking life. With each meeting, his life seemed to improve. His work prospered. His worries eased. Even the elders noticed a change in his presence. Soon, the village began to whisper, not in fear, but in curiosity. Some said the ancestors were favoring him. Others believed he had been chosen for protection. No one questioned the source too closely, because the results appeared good. But every gift came with a condition, spoken softly and only once. He was told never to speak of her name during daylight, never to follow her beyond the river's edge, and never to ask for more than what was freely given. These rules did not sound heavy. They felt small, manageable, and that is how such choices often begin, not with danger, but with agreement. The young man accepted, believing love should not be questioned when it feels right. The village, seeing only the blessing and not the boundary, gave their quiet approval. What none of them realized was that this was no longer a meeting. It was a crossing, and once the line between worlds is stepped over for love, it does not remain visible for long. Here's what most people don't realize. In many African folk tales, the danger never begins with fear. It begins with fascination. Desire becomes stronger when it is wrapped in mystery. When something feels rare, hidden, or just beyond reach, the human mind assigns it greater value. The elders understood this long before psychology gave it language. In stories of love between humans and spirits, the attraction deepens not because of what is given, but because of what is withheld. Limited meetings, unspoken rules, promises that feel sacred precisely because they are fragile. This is how love slowly shifts its shape. At first, It brings warmth, like fire on a cold night. It comforts. It reassures. It gives light. But fire without boundaries does not remain a companion. It spreads. It demands fuel. And eventually, it consumes what it once protected. The same is true of sweetness. In balance, it nourishes. Without balance, it overwhelms the body and dulls the senses. What once tasted rich becomes impossible to enjoy. African folk tales used spirits to express this truth because spirits represented forces that cannot be easily controlled. They symbolize desire that grows faster than intention and attachment that tightens quietly around the heart. In the modern world, the setting has changed, but the pattern remains. Love mixed with uncertainty feels intense. Affection without clear limits feels powerful, and attention that comes with conditions often feels more valuable than attention freely given. This is why boundaries are rarely crossed all at once. They erode slowly, justified by emotion and comforted by reward. In the story, the young man did not notice when affection became dependence. The rules felt like devotion, the silence felt like loyalty, and the mystery felt like depth. But when limits disappear, love no longer rests. It watches, it listens, it waits. And this is the moment African folklore always pauses, because it is here, long before loss, that the true danger quietly takes root. And this is where it gets really interesting. In many African folk tales, the turning point does not arrive as tragedy. It arrives as improvement. As the bond between the young man and the spirit deepened, life seemed to open in his favor. His harvest grew stronger than before. Opportunities found him without effort. Even his presence carried a quiet authority that others could not explain. The village noticed. People began to seek his counsel. Some believed he was protected by ancestral forces. Others whispered that love had sharpened his spirit and focus. No one spoke of danger because nothing appeared broken yet. But beneath the surface, small shifts had begun. The meetings by the river grew longer. What once happened at night stretched into dawn. The spirit's voice became more insistent, not demanding, but persuasive. She asked for more time, more secrecy, more devotion. At first, these requests felt natural. After all, deep connection always asks for closeness. Then came the quiet sacrifices. He stopped attending communal gatherings. Family obligations were postponed. Rituals once shared with others were performed alone. In African storytelling, imbalance rarely announces itself loudly. It shows up in what is slowly neglected. The elders noticed that the river's flow changed, subtle but uneven. The forest grew unusually silent at night. Animals avoided paths they once traveled freely. These signs were not interpreted as warnings at first. They were seen as mysteries. And mystery, when paired with benefit, is often mistaken for blessing. The spirit did not threaten. She did not command. She simply reminded him that love between worlds required protection, and protection required distance from others. Human relationships weakened not through conflict, but through absence. Conversations shortened. Laughter faded. Trust thinned quietly. And still, no one questioned the cost, because the rewards continued. In African folktales, this is the moment where the audience understands something the characters do not. When love begins to demand isolation, it has already started asking for more than it should. But the story does not stop here, because the true price of such devotion is never revealed until balance can no longer be restored. In African folktales, wisdom is often hidden in patterns rather than rules. This is one of those patterns. When love asks for more, it rarely takes in equal parts. At first, giving more attention feels harmless. Then more time is required. Then more secrecy. Then more separation from others. This is not coincidence. It is arithmetic. More love, when it is unlimited, often results in less freedom. More devotion, when it is unbalanced, slowly leaves less of the self behind. The elders understood that every increase has a corresponding cost. Even if it is not paid immediately, in human love, the exchange is visible. Two people negotiate space, expectations, and presence. Boundaries exist because both sides are limited. But love, tied to the spirit world, as told in folklore, operates differently. Spirits do not age. They do not tire. Their needs do not decrease with time. So comparison begins, not between people, but between types of love. Human love feels grounded, shared, and imperfect. Spirit love feels intense, focused, and endless, and intensity is often mistaken for depth. Psychologically, humans are drawn to what feels powerful in the moment. We measure love by how strongly it pulls us, not by how well it supports us over time. Fulfillment grows slowly, but desire multiplies quickly. This is why love without boundaries carries an exponential cost. Each step deeper demands the next step without asking whether the ground can still hold weight. Emotional debt accumulates quietly. Every missed gathering, every ignored obligation, every silenced doubt. Nothing breaks all at once. In African folktales, tragedy does not come from loving too much. It comes from forgetting that love, like life, must exist in balance. And once the mathematics of more overtakes wisdom, the equation always resolves itself, not in favor of desire, but in favor of consequence. Stories like this one are more than entertainment. They are guides, handed down through generations to help us navigate the forces that move through the heart. The first lesson is simple but profound. Name your desire. Ask yourself honestly, what kind of love are you chasing? Is it a love that nourishes you and those around you, or a love that asks you to leave pieces of yourself behind? In the folktales, the young man believed he was seeking connection, but he had not paused to name what he truly needed, and that blurred line opened the door to imbalance. In our modern lives, naming desire is the first safeguard against being carried away by intensity alone. The second lesson is equally important. Identify the hidden price. Every gift, every relationship carries a cost. In African folklore, the price is sometimes subtle. A stolen evening, a missed ritual, a quiet absence. In real life, it might be time, energy, or emotional safety. Before you step deeper into love, ask yourself, what am I trading away? Recognize these costs early, because, like the river that quietly swells before flooding the bank, debts of the heart accumulate before we even notice. The third lesson is, define sacred boundaries. Some rules are not negotiable. The ancestors taught that certain lines must never be crossed, even when love feels compelling or unavoidable. Boundaries are not walls. They are protective measures that allow love to exist without consuming identity. They honor both yourself and the one you love. Without them, devotion becomes entanglement, and connection becomes dependence. When we take these lessons into our modern world, they remain relevant. Love is a force. It can inspire growth, beauty, and resilience, but only when guided by awareness, respect, and balance. By naming your desire, recognizing the hidden cost, and holding sacred boundaries, you create relationships that strengthen rather than diminish the self. In the village by the river, these lessons were not written, they were lived. And even today, they offer a quiet wisdom. Love that is mindful, measured, and respectful endures. Love that is blind, boundless, or unexamined carries consequences that are often revealed too late. The river, which had once reflected moonlight like silver, began to ripple in ways the young man could not control. The meetings that had once brought joy and favor became tense with unspoken expectation. Every time he lingered too long, or crossed a line he had not been told existed, the presence that had been a source of wonder began to fade. In African folk tales, spirits do not linger where rules are broken. They do not punish in anger, they withdraw in sorrow. And that is exactly what happened. One night, as the mist rose from the river, and the forest held its usual quiet, the spirit did not appear. The moonlight seemed colder, the water reflected only the young man's own eyes. He realized with sudden clarity that the love he had cherished could not exist outside the boundaries set by the other world. To hold it, he would have had to abandon all that made him human, his family, his friendships, the rituals that connected him to the ancestors, and even his own sense of self. The choice became unavoidable. He could remain in the human world, keeping the love of his family, his village, and his own life intact, but lose the magical connection forever. Or he could follow the spirit across the river's edge, leaving everything he had ever known behind. With a heavy heart, he chose to stay. The spirit receded, not with anger, but with quiet understanding, leaving behind only memory and the lessons embedded in it. The village noticed the change. Some saw only the absence of magic, but the elders understood what had happened. They whispered that wisdom sometimes comes wrapped in loss, and that love, true, enduring love, requires discernment and sacrifice. In that moment, the young man gained something far greater than the magic he had lost: insight. He understood the cost of desire unchecked, the value of boundaries, and the quiet power of choosing balance over longing. And as the river flowed on, the village returned to its rhythms, carrying with it the memory of a love that had bridged worlds, a story that reminded them, and us, that the deepest lessons of the heart often arrive through loss, transformation, and the courage to let go. Stories like this one, told across generations in African villages, are not simply about magic, spirits, or impossible love. They are about the choices we make, the boundaries we set, and the ways we navigate desire in our own lives. The young man's journey reminds us that love can be powerful, even transformative, but it is never without responsibility. It asks us to balance longing with wisdom, devotion with self-respect, and passion with restraint. When we act thoughtfully, even intense desire can inspire growth rather than destruction. When we ignore boundaries, even the most beautiful connection can lead to loss. So take a moment to reflect. Ask yourself, what kinds of love am I inviting into my life? Are my relationships nourishing me, or slowly taking pieces of who I am? Where must I hold firm, and where can I allow my heart to grow? And if this story resonated with you, share it with someone navigating their own path of love and desire. Stories like these are meant to be remembered, discussed, and applied. By sharing, we continue the wisdom of the elders, reminding ourselves and others that reflection, balance, and awareness are timeless guides. If you want to hear more African folk tales that connect ancient insight with modern life, subscribe and stay with us as we explore the lessons hidden in these stories, lessons that continue to shape hearts and choices today. Because ultimately, these tales endure not for their magic, but for the wisdom they quietly offer every listener willing to pause and consider. Love is powerful, desire is real, and wisdom is the path that allows both to thrive.